Static buzzes faintly through the speakers, a barely there hum beneath the crackle of an old television. Imagine turning on your TV late at night, expecting nothing but the usual dullness of reruns and static, and then suddenly something else flickers to life, something you weren't supposed to see. What if that screen could reach beyond the living, beyond time itself? What if it whispered messages from those who no longer walk among us? I moved into a small, quiet suburb just a few weeks ago, renting a modest house built in the 1960s. The kind of place where the streets are lined with aging maple trees, their leaves rustling gently like secrets in the wind. My neighbors kept to themselves, mostly retired folks or young families who left early in the morning and returned late at night. It felt normal, comfortable even. The house was a bit of a throwback, wood paneling in the living room, those old-fashioned ceiling lights that buzz softly, and a bulky, outdated TV set that the previous tenant had left behind. It was a relic from another era, a dusty piece of nostalgia, sitting in the corner unplugged and forgotten. I didn't think much of it until one restless night when the power flickered and the old TV suddenly sprang to life on its own. At first, there was nothing but static, the white noise filling the screen with chaotic dots and lines. But then faint images began to shimmer through blurred faces, fleeting shadows and strange symbols that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some unheard frequency. I blinked, convinced it was just a trick of the light or a glitch from the aging hardware. But the images kept coming, unrelenting and eerie. I was drawn to it, unable to look away. The static seemed alive, like it was watching me as much as I was watching it. And then came the messages, short, cryptic phrases that flashed briefly before disappearing. Names, dates, phrases like "help me" or "don't trust the channel." At first I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe it was stress from the move or exhaustion from work. But the messages felt too deliberate, too specific to be random noise. Over the next few days, I found myself tuning in at odd hours, unable to resist the pull of that flickering screen. No matter what time I switched it on, the channel was always there, never listed on the TV guide, always buried deep in the static. It didn't respond to the remote. The channel number was blank, and yet it was always broadcasting. At times the images became clearer, showing snippets of old newscasts, grainy footage from decades ago, and faces I recognized from local legends and unsolved mysteries. It was as if the station was a time capsule, a bridge between the past and the present, but warped, twisted by something unseen. The more I watched, the more I felt like I was peering into a place that wasn't meant for the living. My sleep became restless. The line between what was real and what I saw on the screen began to blur. I'd wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, hearing faint whispers echoing from the TV, even when it was off. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of figures lurking in the corners of the room just beyond my vision. My friends didn't believe me when I told them. They laughed it off as insomnia or imagination. But I knew something was wrong. There was a story behind that channel, something dark and buried, something connected to the house I'd moved into, to the neighborhood that felt too quiet, too empty. It wasn't just a haunted house, it was a haunted signal, a broadcast from beyond, meant only for a few eyes to see. And those who watched too long, I was beginning to understand, didn't stay sane for long. But why me? Why now? The more I dug, the more I found strange records of a local TV station that had gone off the air decades ago, Station 7. It had shut down abruptly in the late 70s after a series of bizarre incidents and mysterious disappearances among its staff. Some said the station was cursed. Others whispered about forbidden broadcasts that reached into the spiritual realm. And now somehow Station 7 was back, not in the daylight, not in the official schedules, but here, on my old TV buried in static and shadows, speaking in a language I was only beginning to understand. Everything seemed normal on the surface. The neighborhood, the quiet streets, the hum of everyday life. But behind the screen, something else was watching, waiting, communicating. The static wasn't just noise, it was a veil, a thin curtain between this world and the next. As I write this now, the screen flickers beside me. Faces flash, some pleading, some warning. The line between reality and the unknown is thinner than I ever imagined. And the messages keep coming, each one more chilling than the last. I don't know how long I can keep watching, but I can't stop, because once you see the static speak, you realize it never really goes away. The nights grew longer, and with them the feeling that something wasn't quite right settled over the house like a thick fog. At first I told myself it was just the stress of moving, the adjustment to a new place. But slowly, little things began to unravel the fabric of my everyday life. It started subtly. One night I was watching the strange channel when I noticed a shadow flicker at the edge of my vision. I turned quickly, expecting maybe a stray curtain or a trick of the light, but the room was empty. My heartbeat sped up, but I chalked it up to exhaustion. The next morning, I found the TV unplugged, though I was certain I had left it on. I plugged it back in, dismissing it as a glitch, but the unease lingered. Then came the knocking. Every night at exactly 3:00 a.m., there was a sharp, rhythmic knock on the door. I would lie awake, heart pounding, and when I finally gathered the courage to peek through the peephole, there was nothing but darkness and an empty street. No footsteps, no wind, just silence. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself it was the house settling or a prank. But the knocks never stopped. One evening, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I searched the house for any clues about the previous tenant. In the attic, hidden beneath a pile of dusty newspapers, I found an old diary. Its leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. As I flipped through, my eyes caught a name scribbled on the last page. My name. The diary belonged to someone who had lived here decades ago. Someone obsessed with the station, the mysterious Channel 7. The entries detailed strange broadcasts, messages only visible on this channel, and the madness that followed those who watched. The final pages were filled with frantic warnings and pleas. Don't trust the screen. They watch through the static. And chillingly, I see you now. That night, the TV screen showed a new message, one that chilled me to my core. A face, pale and distorted, whispered my name before the screen erupted into static. I wanted to turn it off, but my fingers froze, glued to the remote. The line between the living and the dead was thinning, and I was caught in the middle. Sleep became a stranger. I heard whispers echoing through the walls, soft voices calling from the TV, even when it was off. Shadows stretched longer, flickering just beyond the corner of my eye. The house no longer felt like a home. It was a vessel, a gateway. I wasn't alone in this. Stories surfaced online, people from different towns, different lives, all seeing the same ghostly channel, all driven to the edge by its cryptic messages. Some vanished, others lost their minds, but none could explain how or why this channel connected them. Every day, the line between reality and the broadcast blurred further. My reflection in the TV screen showed fleeting images of faces that weren't mine. The messages became commands. What? Listen. Don't turn away. And beneath it all, a terrifying truth began to surface. The channel wasn't just a window to the dead. It was a prison trapping the souls of those who dared to watch, binding them forever in the static. I realized too late that the station had rules that were never written but always enforced. To break them was to invite the darkness in. Now I sit here watching the screen flicker in the dead of night, wondering if I will ever escape the grip of the static, or if I'm already lost to the broadcast. The patterns began to reveal themselves, subtle at first, but unmistakable once you notice. The channel didn't just broadcast. Randomly, it followed rules woven deep into the flickering static like a language only the lost could decipher. I started to pay close attention, desperate to understand, before it consumed me completely. Every night without fail, the channel appeared at exactly 2:17 a.m. No matter what I did. If I switched to it before that time, it was just static. But once the clock struck 2:17, the screen shifted a subtle distortion. as if the veil between worlds grew thin just for a moment. That was the gateway the moment the dead spoke. One rule was clear: never look directly into the screen after 2 a.m. The first time I broke this, I thought I saw movement inside the glass, faint figures writhing in the static like trapped shadows. I blinked and the image was gone. But that night my dreams were haunted by those figures whispering secrets I couldn't understand but felt painfully important. Another rule revealed itself with every lie I told. I caught myself fibbing to friends about the channel, trying to downplay my fear. But the channel punished deception. With each untruth, the messages grew darker and more personal, showing me memories I had tried to forget, secrets I buried deep. It was as if the channel knew me, feeding on my fears, unraveling my mind thread by thread. One night, I slept on the bottom bunk of a rickety old bed I'd found in the attic. The house creaked and groaned, but then I heard it, the soft sound of crying from the top bunk. My heart leapt, but I was alone. No one else lived here. The crying echoed in the stillness, a mournful sound that wrapped around me like cold fingers. Digging through old records, I uncovered the house's darkest secret. Decades ago, it had been the site of a terrible Crimea child, gagged and hidden away in this very home, kept prisoner for 7 long years. The child had vanished without a trace, but locals whispered that its spirit lingered trapped between worlds, crying out in silence. The channel, I realized, was somehow connected to that tragedy. It was a broadcast not of the living, but of the restless dead, their stories etched into the flickering screen. The messages, the shadows, the cries, they were all pieces of a puzzle I was forced to solve. Yet the channel's hold grew stronger. The longer I watched, the more my reality shifted. The line between the house and the screen blurred until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The static was no longer just noise. It was a force, a presence, a living thing that reached out to me through the flickering images. And the rules, they were clear: follow them or be consumed. But curiosity, or perhaps madness, pushed me closer to the edge. I had to know what was on the other side of the static. I had to understand the voices, the faces, the messages, even if it meant losing myself. That night, the static seemed thicker than ever, a dense fog of white noise crawling across the screen. I knew I was crossing a line, breaking a rule, but something inside me urged me forward. The channel wasn't just a broadcast, it was a trap, and I was walking right into its center. I reached out and touched the screen. It was cold, impossibly cold, like the breath of something dead. The images twisted and warped beneath my fingertips, faces emerging from the haze, mouths opening in silent screams. A chill ran down my spine, as the whispers grew louder, pressing against my mind like a storm. I tried to pull away, but the screen pulsed, holding me in place. And then I saw it, a message carved across the static, slow and deliberate. Don't sleep when I am awake. Panic surged through me. I wanted to turn away, to run, but my body was frozen, locked in place by something older, something hungry. I remembered the warnings from the diary, the stories from those who vanished. None had dared to break the rules. But I had, and now I was trapped in a nightmare that stretched beyond the limits of the living world. The room grew colder, the shadows deepened, and the screen flickered with images that no eye should see. I saw myself, or what looked like mere hollow shell eyes, empty, trapped forever behind the static. I realized then that the channel didn't just show messages from the dead, it took from the living, snatching pieces of their souls, binding them to the broadcast. Desperation gave way to a frantic need to escape. I scrambled from the chair, backing away from the screen as it pulsed with malevolent energy. But the house seemed to close in walls, whispering shadows crawling closer. In my last moments of clarity, I understood the true horror. The channel was not a bridge between worlds, but a prison, and I was already part of the broadcast. The TV went dark. Silence, and then a faint crackle. The static returned. Tag video, mahik, analoghorror, creepypasta, supernatural, ghost stories, paranormal, old TV, haunted channel, urban legend, psychological horror, horror stories, static noise, channel 7, unexplained, haunted house, spiritual broadcasts. That final silence was suffocating, a void that swallowed every sound, every breath. Yet even in the darkness I could feel it, the presence lingering, watching, waiting. The house no longer felt like a safe place, but a stage set for something sinister beyond comprehension. Days turned into restless nights, and though the television was off, the whispers never ceased. Sometimes when the world was quietest, I could swear the static was still there, lurking just beneath the surface of my vision. It was as if the broadcast never really stopped. It had simply become part of me. I started to notice subtle changes around the house. Objects misplaced, faint footprints in dust where no one had walked, shadows that stretched in impossible ways, bending and twisting, reaching toward me. I would glance into the darkened screen of the unplugged TV, and for a fleeting second I thought I saw eyes staring back. Sleep was now a fragile thing. Every time I closed my eyes, the words echoed, "Don't sleep when I'm awake." It wasn't just a warning, it was a promise. The more I resisted, the more the channel's grasp tightened. One night, unable to bear the silence, I turned the TV back on. The static roared to life, swallowing the room in white noise. But this time, the images were clearer, more vivid, and personal. Faces from the past. My own face twisted in agony, and messages scrawled in desperate handwriting. "Help me, you belong here. Join us." The channel had become a mirror, reflecting not just ghosts, but my own fractured mind. It was no longer broadcasting from some distant realm. It was inside me, bleeding into my reality. I don't know how much longer I have before I become part of the static lost forever in the endless broadcast of the dead. Maybe you're watching right now, the static flickering just out of sight, waiting for you to look closer. Because the channel never really disappears. It just waits. And when it calls your name, the static on the screen will be the last thing you see.